Frank Ocean was born in Long Beach, California. At a young age, at only 5 years old, his family relocated to New Orleans, and this was where the journey began. When he was 6, his dad left without any explanation. What we do know is his father was a keyboardist and singer early in life, but his dad leaving caused his grandfather to step in as the father figure. He introduced Frank Ocean to luxury car magazines, which Frank immediately fell in love with. He was fascinated by the millionaire lifestyle. Frank was attracted to music at an early age, booking his first studio session at 12 years old. But at the beginning, his mom wasn't supportive of his musical ambitions at all, because as stated before, his father was a musician, which left her with a bad taste in her mouth regarding the profession. But Frank didn't let that stop him. Frank went to college just to study English and make his mom happy. But he knew what he really wanted to do. He had little hustles here and there, like mowing lawns and walking dogs, and used that money to afford studio time when he was 16. He was in love with writing lyrics and songs, but one very historical day changed the pace of his life forever.
We're like under 9 feet of water here. We're trying to get out. We have a baby. There's 5 of us. We're very frightened.
Early morning on August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast of the United States. Katrina was one of the 5 deadliest hurricanes in the history of the United States and was the costliest tropical cyclone on record at the time. Tens of thousands of people, homes, and other properties met their end during the storm. Frank was 18 years old, and the hurricane took away his home and his recording studio. Imagine everything you love and worked hard for gets taken away from you overnight. I'm sure it felt like it wasn't meant to be, because not only is your own mother not accepting of what you're doing, but so is the universe. If a natural disaster isn't the biggest sign to have you stop doing what you love, then what is? He could have easily gave up and just finished school. He could have lived a comfortable lifestyle and keep his family happy with a 9-to-5 job. But not even one of Earth's deadliest hurricanes can stop this beast of a human. And I'm happy it didn't, because being at the right place at the right time is definitely a real thing. Frank received an offer from a friend in Los Angeles for discounted studio time. So Frank scrapped up the money he could, which totaled up to $1,100. $1,100 in LA is not much. We can even do some quick calculations to see how much gas money it took to get there. Before leaving, he was attending University of Louisiana in Lafayette. The drive from that college to Los Angeles, California is a minimum of 1,760 miles, a 26-hour drive. Gas was roughly $2.50 per gallon. Let's say he drove an average car, nothing fancy, maybe like a Honda Civic or something. That holds 13 gallons of gas. On average, 1 gallon of gas can take you 25 miles. So if it's 1760 miles to get there, he's spending around $180. And I think it's safe to round it up to $200 if we assume he spent very little money on food. So my man is left with $900 by the time he gets to LA. And I'm sure this is something he thought of while going there. So doing this leap is an extremely ballsy move. Now he's arrived in LA. So what's next? Frank bounced around various fast food jobs to survive, but never stopped his musical grind. Next thing you know, he was at the right place at the right time. One night, I went to a listening party just to pick up my backpack from a friend. Next thing I know, I'm in the studio, and everyone's putting their laptops on the pool table, playing their songs through these big ass speakers. It was crazy, and they wanted me to play, so I plugged in, and they were like, oh shit. There were producers there, and they said, you should come up to the studio and write. So I did. I sit in those rooms for hours, but I wouldn't write any line that was as good as the lines being written in the rooms next to me. It was just like I had to elevate. I was looking at it like an athlete then, like I just wanted to be better than everyone else. And from there, it was a snowball effect. Meeting people, networking, connecting, and next thing you know, it's been 3 years. And he's had huge accomplishments under his belt. He managed to bank a songwriting deal, ghostwriting for acts like Justin Bieber, Beyonce, John Legend, and more. In only 3 years, he was living this big luxury dream that he's always wanted to since he was a kid. Owning a BMW, having an apartment in Beverly Hills, having hundreds of thousands of dollars in his account, he had it good. There was a point where I was composing for other people, and it might have been comfy to continue to do that and enjoy that income stream and the anonymity. But that's not why I moved away from school and away from family. Now, I've been holding off on telling you something. This is not the story of Frank Ocean. In fact, Frank Ocean didn't even exist. The story I just told you was about Christopher Breaux, or Bro. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, but it's okay. Before he was Frank Ocean. When his grandfather started hanging out with him, Christopher never left his side. So his mom warm-heartedly gave him the nickname Lonny, after his grandfather, Lionel. But once Lonnie decided he wanted a face in the music scene in 2009, he rebranded as Frank Ocean. And 2009 was the biggest year of Frank Ocean's life. Shortly after rebranding, he met Tyler, the Creator. First time I met Tyler, he was all over the place. He let me know that he was just about to jack off before I called him. That was our first exchange. From there, we talked about music, dinosaurs, the Grammys he wanted and I wanted. It was just creative people talking about what drives them and what pops in their head. From the first conversation, I had a sense that he was onto something. Frank quickly fell in with Odd Future. He was inspired by the group's do-it-yourself approach to indie rap. The shy ghostwriter from New Orleans is finally breaking out of his shell. I was at a real dark time in my life when I met them. At 20 or 21, I think I had a couple $100,000 from producing and songwriting. A nice car, a Beverly Hills apartment, and I was miserable. That do-it-yourself mentality of Odd Future really rubbed off on me. The early success of Frank Ocean's songwriting caught the interest of Christopher Tricky Stewart, the producer behind hits like Rihanna's Umbrella and Beyonce's Single Ladies. Tricky approached Frank with promises of a solo career and ended up signing the young songwriter to Def Jam as a solo artist at the end of 2009. But Def Jam never gave him the recording budget and seemed disinterested in his future. Frank's frustration with the label grew over several months until one day he decided to write, produce, and record without his label. I'm sure the DIY mentality of Odd Future had inspired him to say f it and take the leap. The project would release in 2011, independently and for free on Frank's Tumblr under his new name, Frank Ocean. With the help of his fellow Odd Future members, the mixtape did extremely well. The tape was called Nostalgia Ultra, and once Def Jam saw the numbers, their attention has been grabbed. It took 3 entire years after signing with Def Jam for them to finally help him get out his first official album, Channel Orange. But before releasing this album, Frank Ocean had to let the world know something he's been hiding for a very long time. Frank Ocean had a secret, and he exposed his secret in 2012 with an essay that told the story about his first true love when he was 19, and this love was with another man. And this wasn't something easy to do. Coming out as a gay man means it might be tougher for people to respect you as an artist. People will look at you funny and maybe even stop listening because they don't support the actions. But Frank Ocean didn't care, and he shared his story, which caused the bond between him and his listeners to feel closer. And it felt as if we knew this seemingly overnight mysterious superstar just a little more. Channel Orange was huge, winning Album of the Year in 2023 Grammys over Chris Brown and Miguel. And Chris Brown was seen being the only one in the audience not standing up as Frank Ocean went up to grab his reward. This could be because he actually beefed with Frank Ocean at the time. This goes back a couple years from this time in 2011. Around this time was when Tyler and friends started blowing up in the music scene, and his music at the time was dark, even dissing Jesus at some point.
Jesus called, he said he's sick of the disses, I told him to quit.
Chris Brown decided to tweet,
"All this demonic music is wackish. What happened to being happy?"
Tyler, the Creator, noticed this and replied,
"Why is Chris Brown talking so much about Metallica? Weird."
Then went on to roast him. But at some point, Chris Brown tweets out this.
"I f with Frank Ocean. Reminds me of a young James Fauntleroy."
How the f do you say this name? Fauntleroy? Fauntleroy? That guy.
Or Kevin Costner.
Which are the artists that work behind the scenes and don't really have a face in the public eye. Frank Ocean replies, "I f with Chris. Reminds me of a young Cisco or Ike Turner." A small amount of time later, Frank Ocean got pressed by some of Chris Brown's cousins on the road. And fast forward to 2023, the same year as the Grammys, Frank Ocean actually got jumped by Chris Brown and his goons. Frank went to the studio and Chris happened to be there. Frank saw Chris was in his parking spot, so he blocked Chris from leaving and said, "This is my studio. This is my parking spot." So Chris tried to defuse the situation by trying to dab up Frank Ocean, but Frank denied it. Chris got offended. And this part is a little gray. Some say Frank threw the first punch and some say Chris threw the first punch. And I guess we'll never really know what happened. The only person that gave us more evidence was actually Sean Kingston. He happened to be at the studio that day and told his side of the story. This was a 6-man fight total, and it's unclear how many men were on each side. But all we know is they got Frank in a corner and jumped him. After some time passed, Frank Ocean decided not to press charges or move forward with any lawsuits, and stating on his Tumblr, all he wants is peace. Def Jam saw how successful Channel Orange was. They gave Frank a $2 million advance to record his final record of his 2-album deal. And this is where they f***ed up, because what Frank was about to do next is top tier, like mastermind. He was about to change the music industry forever. He used every single cent of that $2 million advance, putting absolutely everything he possibly can in this album. He went through all of the world's top studios, from France to Tokyo, Abbey Road, and more. He got the help from people at the top of the music game, and it took over 2 years to ensure that the album was perfect. Now, almost right before the release of this new album drop, something huge happened.
Traumatized and injured clubbers were helped from the scene and taken to hospital for treatment.
Unfortunately, in June 2016, there was a shooting in Orlando at a gay club that left 50 people dead. I was 6 years old when I heard my dad call our transgender waitress as he dragged me out a neighborhood diner, saying he wouldn't want to be served because she was dirty. That was the last afternoon I saw my father, and the first time I heard that word, I think, although it wouldn't shock me if it wasn't. Frank Ocean's absent father, Calvin Cooksey, came out of the woodworks and had sued him for defamation and $14.5 million in damages in response to that note that Ocean posted on his Tumblr in June 2016 during the aftermath of the Orlando nightclub shooting. Thankfully, the judge was in favor of Frank Ocean and declared the father has not provided sufficient evidence of defamation. He most likely lied just to see if he could get like a quick bag off of Frank Ocean's success, when this scumbag should have never left him in the first place. But hey man, things happen for a reason. If he never left, maybe Frank Ocean would not ever exist. On August 1st, 2016, his 7-year chess game with Def Jam has reached its final stretch. Frank Ocean started a live stream at 3 a.m. with different snippets of his upcoming music playing in the background. The stream was a video of Frank building a staircase, and it ended once he climbed them. 2 weeks later, Frank paid back Def Jam the $2 million advance, which let him retain ownership of any additional recordings he had made over the last 2 years. But how did he get that $2 million? On August 19th of 2016, Frank released a 45-minute cut version of the live stream under the name Endless, and was released exclusively on Apple Music. Endless counted as the second studio album of his contract with Def Jam, and now he can release anything he wants under an independent artist. And he took no time at all, because Endless was a bullshit throwaway album, and he did Def Jam so dirty, dude. 24 hours later, on August 20th of 2016, he released Blonde, the real album he's been working on. Endless was a throwaway album he used to leave his contract. This way he can release the real album alone. He made a $20 million deal with Apple in secret to release Blonde exclusively on Apple Music, and took $2 million of that money to pay back Def Jam that advance. Now, Def Jam is signed under Universal, and Universal was pissed and decided no artist is allowed to do exclusive streaming deals anymore. The first week Blonde came out, he sold over 250,000 albums, and because this was an independent release, he was able to take home 70% of the revenue instead of the usual 10 or 15% deal labels normally do with their artists. This is now known as the biggest finesse in the music industry. Today, Frank has released singles here and there and collabed with other artists, but no sign of a new album yet. But what has been announced is Homer, his new luxury jewelry company, which shows he's still, to this day, obsessed with the luxurious lifestyle and stood true to himself. One thing I've noticed that's kind of strange is on Spotify. His newest release, In My Room, has Universal credited in the song. Did Universal and Frank make amends? I guess we'll have to wait to find out. If you know Frank Ocean, you most likely know Tyler, the Creator. And Tyler did a whole song about loving a child. Go see what that was about.